Welcome, everyone. We're honored today to have with us Maietta and Alison Hamilton uh, to talk about a course I'll be teaching for the 21st Qualitative Research Summer Intensive. This conversation is part of the ResearchTalk Qualitative Scholar Conversation Series. Their course is titled Visual Strategies for Working Through and Presenting Qualitative Data. It's a new course for QRSI, but not a new topic at all for Ray and Alison. I'm Paul Mihas. I'm a qualitative consultant for ResearchTalk and have been so for almost over 20 years. But I'm also the assistant director of qualitative and mixed methods research at the Odum Institute at UNC Chapel Hill. I'll ask Jeff Petruzzelli, another member of the ResearchTalk team, to introduce himself, and then we'll move to Ray and Alison and learn more about the course.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, I'm Jeff Petruzzelli. I'm a qualitative research specialist at ResearchTalk. I've been with ResearchTalk since 2001. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. So Alison and Ray, you both have a long history with the ever-changing world of qualitative research. I'd like to start by asking each of you to talk a little bit about yourselves. You've worked with hundreds of researchers over the years, and have seen their journeys, but you've had journeys of your own. And I'd like you to maybe talk about your evolution and what qualitative research means for you.
Wonderful. Alison, you want to start? You want me to your preference?
You go ahead.
All right. I'm Ray Maietta. I am now president of ResearchTalk, I should say now, since 1996. And it's been quite a journey. It's different than I would have thought I would have done. Quickly, I was for a friend, we abandoned his bachelor party, and instead just he and his dad and another friend of ours, we decided to go to Atlantic City rather than participate in what turned out to be debauchery we were not interested in. And there was a fortune teller who said, I will find comfort and effectiveness in my life as an entrepreneur. And we thought she was like crazy and off base, and no one else had their fortune told by her, but here we go. So that's kind of the journey to ResearchTalk. But qualitative inquiry for me, I didn't really know about until maybe when I was an undergrad. I had a good friend who was engaged to a woman who ran a market research company that did qual, and I worked for them. And the first project we worked on, we traveled around the country and we were talking to beer drinkers, and we would take turns doing interviews. And there was just something about the information that could be garnered, the access to that just the idea of new thoughts, new ideas, not necessarily a topic I would normally study and pursue, became intriguing. And then fast forward when I did my dissertation, which was called Lost in the Shuffle in Search of Wayward Friendship, what really motivated my interest could not be answered through quantitative instruments. So that led me to pursue focus groups and individual interviews. I was lucky enough to be trained by David Morgan, have a great mentor team, met wonderful people along the way. And as I did my postdoc, ventured into consulting accidentally. And yeah, and then just kind of continue doing my own qualitative, working with others in their qualitative work. And seeing the excitement, seeing the new and unique contributions qual could make, filling in blanks to fields that exist. It's just been a wonderful journey, and having the pleasure, Jeff and I talk all the time about how lucky we are to work with folks who do so many different things. The topics we get exposed to, we're never experts on any of them, but we get to learn from experts. And it's just wonderful to really think about learning with stories, presenting via stories, and I wouldn't replace it. So it's been a good journey. For you, Al. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
No, go ahead, Alison.
Oh, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Hamilton. I have also been with ResearchTalk for over 20 years. Ray and I met when he was doing a training, and that was my kindred spirit. I'm an anthropologist by training, and studied anthropology from undergrad on. So I've really always leaned toward qualitative work at first, linguistic anthropology, which just was such a great fit for me, given my love of words and language and how people tell stories, and it just progressed from there, doing a PhD in anthropology as well. I'm a professor in psychiatry actually at UCLA, and I'm a research career scientist at the VA. And in those roles, I really focus on health services research and implementation research. So I'm a very applied anthropologist, a very applied methodologist. And so I really think a lot about how do I take my sort of core anthropological ethnographic training and kind of make it work in applied types of research. And my work is all health focused. And so it's just been, an constantly evolving and inspiring journey for me, especially because we do get to learn so much from our participants and from the different types of courses that we get to teach. And it's very exciting that we're pulling together a lot of things that we've been working on for decades into this course that we're going to be teaching this summer.
Thanks for telling us a little bit about yourselves. So I'm kind of wondering about the origins of this course and your motivations for offering it. I pick up in the title the word strategies, visual strategies, and I think we're always looking for more strategies to deal with complex data. And data is getting more and more complex, if you ask me, in so many ways. And the fact that we have we have social media now, and we live in so many different spaces as human beings. And I wonder if you can just talk about the origins of the course and what brings you to this idea of strategies.
Alison, do you want to start us off and maybe even offer even a definition of the visual strategy stuff? So yeah, I'll let you begin if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the core ideas that we have been working on together as a team, the folks you see here and some folks you don't see here, our Sort and Sift, think and shift approach has always really put data at the center and emphasized this idea that the data is our guide to everything that we do with our qualitative methods and our qualitative analysis. And diagramming other visual strategies have been essential to the ways that we think about using qualitative methods, even beyond analysis itself, certainly as a strategy that we would use in analysis, but that we really want to think about using throughout the life cycle of a project. Even when we're designing a project, we might want to diagram and intentionally using that idea, that term, as a very active way of thinking through what we're working on, how we're conceptualizing, maybe even its different components of a project, and the power of visuals to help us do that thinking and do that conceptualizing. And that is, that can start at a very early stage of the project, where you're literally diagramming out how the different parts of the project connect to each other. That can really help a team figure out, where's my part, who's doing what, how do things connect. So there are visual strategies in that design space all the way through data collection, data analysis, presentation. And we've just found that when we turn to visual strategies, we have an openness and a flexibility and a sense of kind of curiosity that makes it more fun. We've always advocated having fun when you're working with qualitative methods, and that it keeps us just looser and more, as I said, open to exploring ideas and really thinking about what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what's kind of going through our minds at all these different stages of the project. Where else would you go with it, Ray?
No, I think it's great. I love your underscoring the word active and putting that in. It's we think about this term toolbox for the Sort and Sift, think and shift approach we've all co-developed, everybody in this group, plus Kevin Swartout, Kristen Black. and it kind of fills in blanks in an interesting way. We always find that folks who feel like their analysis has deadened their data, people come to us all the time, right, Jeff, and they're talking to us about when we did the field work, when we were talking to people, we were watching people, we were engaging with them, it just all seems so compelling. And now we're doing the analysis and the life's out of it. And I think the life lives at how component parts of what people do in their day-to-day lives connect. And that's really, I think, one of the strengths of diagramming. So we wanted to live there with this tool. And Paul, you for the Sort and Sift approach have done so much with memoing. So we want to be clear that by no means are we saying just do visual strategies only, just do diagramming only. It's critical that they coincide with the use of other kinds of tools, categorization, be it episode profiling, kind of depicting the whole entire episode, categorization, traditional coding, which we really call topic monitoring, memoing, as you talk about. They all are just necessary parts of a complicated process that for us starts with two assumptions. And I'll start us off here, Alison, and maybe if you can feed off the second. But when we look at the base idea of what we do as qualitative researchers is try to really unearth, explore, and understand more deeply the processes that define lived experience, literally nitty-gritty what people are doing and living every day. Those aren't static. So our first assumption is when we use visual strategies and when we analyze, we must feature, engage, have fun, play with these interdependent and moving parts that define the flow of people's day-to-day lived experience. So that's assumption one, is gear right into that place of the interdependent and moving parts of the processes that guide people's everyday life. And then the second assumption, Alison, I'll let you introduce.
Yeah, the second assumption that we've been talking a lot about is the importance of context in our use of qualitative methods, thinking about the context of data collection, thinking about the context of people's lives that they're describing to us in some way, shape, or form. And I think a lot about context in work that I do in health services, and other types of communities, schools, wherever we do the work of qualitative methods, and how important it is to have an understanding of context, and that perhaps even really having that front and center in terms of your analytic interest and points of curiosity. And I think visual strategies are a really dynamic way of helping us to present and represent context, which is not static, not something that we can kind of capture and we have a picture and it just stays that way. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving, very dynamic and really moving and shaping all the time. And so sometimes non-visual strategies, like more text-based strategies, might just not do as much as we need to represent that dynamism and that lack of linearity that we encounter in different contexts and in our need to be able to explain what's going on in any given context. So I think the visual strategies, diagramming and other visual strategies are really, really like tremendously helpful when we're thinking about thinking through context and contextual issues.
And I find just there's the literal space, visual space allows us to think about context because it's like a canvas that we can kind of spread out and kind of think about not just a little fragment, but the bigger picture. So I think that's all really wonderful stuff. So both of you have talked about having fun and playing, and I find that playing is really tied to intellectual discovery. Right. And so I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about knowledge building and how that connecting play to actually building usable knowledge.
It's lovely, Paul. The thing with what's cool about the interdependent moving parts in the context is internal, if you will, to the process, how they flow, external to kind of where people are. But this notion of play as building knowledge, Paul, it's just, we think about while you're doing the diagramming, people focus on the product of, oh, here's a diagram. Can I put it in my final product? Perhaps. That's not really where the interest lies. The interest lies in exactly what you're talking about. Alison, I think you introduced the term just a little bit ago, thinking through. So the thinking through is really to be documented, thought about. When you throw out a diagram and switch to something else, if things morph, don't throw out the first. Figure out why did it morph? How did it morph? Therein lies the emerging content that will guide what you're doing. So actively thinking about, as you're kind of putting together, here's this idea, but there's this moderating factor. There's a conversation we have as, like Jeff, when we work together, we have these conversations about, well, what about this? And this is missing. And then we may kind of bring Alison or Paul into the conversation, like, that thinking, that content, Alison, is part of the play. And that's really how we find what we might present even. So there's that journey, but it's not just what we're putting in, whether we're doing it by hand or in PowerPoint or wherever we might be doing our diagram. It's the whole activity that you talked about, how it has to be active. But it is, Paul, you pointed to exactly the whole key of this is it's the activities that surround the action of diagramming, like memoing. That's where the content lives, isn't it, Alison?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about like just to riff on the idea of play too, is just the playfulness that can be involved in using visual strategies. So I think about, some diagrams that I created recently where I was playing with some shapes, I was playing with some colors, and in the process of shifting around and changing colors and shapes, moving things like literally in front of myself, I was learning and expanding my understanding in doing that, in actually moving a shape from one place to another, or changing the color, changing the shape, or thinking about what are the connections that I'm starting to see. And so I think there's a creativity to it that kind of opens up as well. And all of you know that it's not necessarily my first go-to place with a lot of analyses that I do, but every time I do go to it, or I feel kind of compelled to go to visual strategies because of the nature of the data that I'm working with, I'm reminded that it's, in being creative with how we're visualizing what's going on during data collection or within our analysis, that there's something that opens up and that frees me to kind of think about things in different ways and in new ways, and spark that kind of re-engage that curiosity and that sense of inquiry of, oh, well, wow, when I move this over here, it's a very simple action, but when I move it over here, I see things differently, and how kind of, simple, not simplistic, but how simple even that those types of activities can really foster our understanding.
Yeah.
Your phrase, something that opens up, that really says a lot. And what I'm getting from this is just this idea of generativity and clarity in doing this. So Jeff, I want to just check in with you to see if you have anything you'd like to bring up or share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. We briefly mentioned our sort and sift, think and shift approach earlier, and one of the really key components of sort and sift is what we call episode profiles, which is kind of a combination of different visual strategies. And so I was just wondering if you could just talk briefly. I know it can be a topic in its own right, but if you could just talk briefly about what episode profiles are and how they kind of fit in with this notion of visual strategies as tools that we can both play and learn from.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. It really is, Alison. It's like, well, that really is kind of one of the things that brought us to shape and think more about diagramming as a tool, visual strategies. So episode profiles are shaking us out of this notion of only thinking working data horizontally by monitoring topics and saying, here's what this code and here's a summary of it across all data, and it's moving this way. But we talk to folks, we watch folks, we engage with folks for extended periods, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. That whole entire story, its meaning, its import is of incredible value, and we lose it. So there's the vertical story of what did we learn during that whole thing. And episode profiles a way through writing and memoing and memo writing and in diagramming of depicting that in short order. And with research teams, it's great. So if the four of us are going and Paul and I look together at 4 documents that Alison and Jeff didn't see, and you two do the same for us, we're not going to be able to all process those 8 files. So when Paul and I can consume what you've done and Alison and Jeff can consume what we've done, we shortcut that process of all us becoming familiar. But I want to focus on, and then Alison, if you could just kind of do a short, even introduction to kind of how it fit with your female homeless veteran project. We use the word journey a lot, and we're doing a project now on lifelong friendship. What is it that leads friendships to override where most friendships, adult friendships, fall apart in competition, say, with things like family and career? In our study, we're finding that friends become part of family, and that's like a marker in the journey of the relationship. But what's key for us is not to just look at those spots that are markers in the relationship. Those could be summarized as topics, but it's what brings you to that. So we did a series of diagrams just called To Family, people's movement to become part of the family. And 2 quick stories. One woman was there as her best friend's father was passing, and the medical team said, you know, all of the daughters, he just had daughters, should, you know, go enter and spend time with him now. And he said, wait, all the daughters aren't here. And he invited, you know, the friendship partner to come in, and that was the solid part of. And then it bridged this, and it was a safety gap against them doing their individual families falling apart. They had to be there. And in the second group, one person said, everyone in my life knows Charlotte's got to be there. Like it or not, Charlotte's got to be there. And if you're not cool with Charlotte being a part of what we're doing every day, you know, she's the family, and it's too bad, you know, you're not there if she's not there. So yeah, it's this idea of not just focusing on the key points of movement in the journey, but what brings you from one to the other and back and forth.
Yeah, and I think you might find some parallels in case study research. We draw from some key principles in case study research with episode profiles to really draw out each narrative, process, journey. And when I was working on data that we had collected related to women veterans' pathways to homelessness, each woman in the data collection described her pathway in her own words with pretty much no prompting from us. And it was important to me to start to kind of map out each of those journeys in the way that each woman experienced it, perceived it, and chose to share it with us. And one thing that we were interested in was different points at which something could have happened to potentially prevent the ultimate journey to homelessness. And so there was that practical sort of applied piece to it. But what I also wanted to do, and I felt I could really only achieve through visual strategies, was to literally like map out each journey, and not only look at those different junctures, or as Ray said, those markers of maybe different points of interaction with different systems or different life kind of junctures, the ending of a relationship, or you get a new diagnosis or something like that, sort of key events in people's lives, but also what's in between. So what kinds of things were happening on the course of that pathway during those life experiences could I also tap into and understand, so that, again, going even back to this idea of context, but all of the kind of detail and nuance that lies between the markers, the junctures, the events, and visual strategies really help us with kind of encapsulating, those different parts. Whereas sometimes we might, and it's not an either or by any means, but sometimes when we're more kind of writing about it in more narrative form, we might lose some of those, or just not kind of see. It's not really a loss, but might not see, how are we moving, across these different junctures or markers. And again, as we say with all the different tools that we use in Sort and Sift, Think and Shift, it's not I can only use this and not that. I'm only using A and not B. It's all of them. Like, we want to draw on all these different strategies and tools that are going to help us work with this amazing data that we have the good fortune to be able to collect and work on.
That's right. I see these tools as being additive. They're just
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your course is part of QRSI, which is 8 days long. Your course is offered the first week. I'm kind of wondering if you could talk just a little bit here at the end about your hopes for what participants might do when they get back to their desk or when they go back to the field. How might they integrate what they've learned from the two of you? How might they integrate that into what they do next?
Well, I can get pretty specific about that, because we've taught different, versions of diagramming and using visual strategies. This is really sort of a coalescence of many things that we've been working on. But it is, I mean, in my experience, it's often a revelation to people when they see, oh, wait, I can look at my data in this totally different way. And I can use visual strategies at points other than to put a presentation together. Sometimes we think of it as a final product, but we don't think of it as something we can use all along the way. And so I think, just being able to have a new set of tools and strategies to use, or maybe reinvigorate the use of some things that people had used previously or considered using previously, I think they'll walk away with a sense of how visual strategies can be relevant, like as we were saying before, across the life cycle of a project, and kind of expand out their ideas of when visual approaches can, be relevant, which is pretty much all the time. And some, really practical ways of doing that, learning how PowerPoint can really be exploited in a sense for doing this type of work. That's often another big aha for folks. They're like, wait, PowerPoint isn't just for presentations, so tell me more. So I think there's a lot that folks will walk away with, just new things to be able to do or explore in their work. What do you think, Ray?
I would definitely want to harken back to something, Paul, you put on the table, the word play. And play, have fun. And then in reference, Alison, when you talk about PowerPoint as an analytic tool, Jeff, you bring in this notion all the time when we do our camps, our analysis camps for folks, dosage, right? You don't have to do it all. You can do parts. And even just if you don't dive in deep with diagramming visual strategies initially, that's okay. We oftentimes have folks who say, I'm reading this transcript and I see this idea in these 3 different places, and they flip back and forth between the transcript. And I think there's something here. I think there's something kind of happening, and they can't see it. Literally, what Jeff and I have done with our clients is say, let's see it. And we go to a PowerPoint slide. We simply put those 3 quotations in one view, get a good view, and then all of a sudden, people's brains work more effectively, more efficiently when they can see them at the same time, rather than the flipping. And even that notion, it really changes the activity of your mind and your ability to move from isolated point to integrated points. And it's just, that's just been so cool. And it's one of my favorite things that we do when we work with clients, and witnessing all of a sudden their brains are firing at a level that they weren't when they were first talking frustration.
I love that. I'm really looking forward to what y'all do this summer, and I want to have fun, so I want to sit in if I can.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So thanks everybody. We're at the end here, but I'm really excited. This conversation has really kind of sparked my curiosity. I want to kind of see y'all in action. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you
Beautiful.
so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.